What if I told you that the secret to a richer life isn't about making more money, but about fundamentally changing how you spend what you already have? Today, we're diving deep into the art of spending money. Simple Choices for a Richer Life by Morgan Housel, a book that has revolutionized how millions think about wealth, happiness, and the true purpose of money in our lives. Morgan Housel is a New York Times best-selling author whose previous work, The Psychology of Money, has sold over 9 million copies worldwide. A partner at Collaborative Fund and former columnist for The Motley Fool and The Wall Street Journal, Housel brings over 2 decades of financial writing experience to bear on one of life's most complex questions. How do we use money to actually improve our lives? In The Art of Spending Money, he reveals a profound truth that most financial advice completely misses: that knowing how to spend money is an art, not a science. If you're tired of feeling like more money never seems to bring the happiness you expected, if you've ever wondered why that raise or bonus didn't make you feel as fulfilled as you thought it would, or if you're caught in the endless cycle of wanting more without ever feeling satisfied, then these next few minutes contain insights that could transform your entire relationship with wealth. The truth is that we've been taught everything about making money and almost nothing about what to do with it once we have it. This isn't about budgeting spreadsheets or investment strategies. It's about understanding the psychology behind your spending decisions, recognizing when money becomes a tool versus when it becomes a master, and learning the subtle art of using wealth to build genuine contentment rather than just impressive bank statements. Housel shows us that the difference between money as a blessing and money as a burden lies entirely in how we choose to wield it. Chapter 1. The Two Faces of Money, Understanding Your Financial Identity. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel explains that there are fundamentally two ways to use money, and recognizing which path you're on determines whether wealth becomes your servant or your master. Housel's decades of research into human behavior and finance reveal a startling pattern. Most people believe they're using money as a tool to improve their lives, when in reality they're using it as a yardstick to measure their status against others. This isn't a conscious choice. It's a psychological trap that captures even the most well-intentioned individuals. The problem most people face is that they conflate these two uses of money, never realizing that pursuing status through spending often undermines the very life improvements they're seeking. But Housel's research shows a breakthrough insight that changes everything. Awareness of this distinction is the first step toward financial freedom that actually feels free. Here's what Housel discovered through years of studying wealthy individuals and their spending patterns. Those who use money as a pure tool to buy time, experiences, and security report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction than those with similar wealth who primarily use money for status signaling. This challenges the common belief that all spending is created equal, that a dollar spent is just a dollar spent regardless of motivation. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals that the psychology behind your purchase matters more than the purchase itself. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, money is so tangible that it's an easy goal to strive for, and pursuing it can become the path of least resistance for those who haven't discovered what truly feeds their soul. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of 2 executives who each bought luxury cars in the same week, identical models, identical prices. The first executive bought his car because he loved driving, appreciated the engineering, and genuinely enjoyed the daily experience of commuting in comfort. The second bought his because he wanted his neighbors and colleagues to see him as successful, to signal his status in the company hierarchy. 6 months later, the first executive still smiled every morning getting into his car. The second executive barely noticed his car anymore, except when he worried about scratches or when he saw a newer model and felt a pang of inadequacy. This demonstrates that identical financial decisions can produce completely different emotional outcomes based solely on the underlying motivation. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests starting with what he calls the purpose audit. Before any significant purchase, ask yourself, am I buying this for me or am I buying this for them? The key question becomes, will this purchase directly improve my daily experience, or am I hoping it will improve how others perceive me? Housel warns against the status trap, where each purchase aimed at impressing others only creates a new baseline that requires even more impressive purchases to maintain the same psychological effect. Instead, focus on what he calls utility spending. purchases that genuinely enhance your ability to do things you love, spend time with people you care about, or simply make your daily life more enjoyable. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the 6-month test. Before making any discretionary purchase over a certain threshold, imagine yourself 6 months from now. Will you still actively appreciate this purchase, or will it have faded into background noise? If it's the latter, you're likely buying for status rather than genuine utility. The deeper truth here is that money amplifies who you already are, but it cannot create an identity for you. When you use money as a tool for authentic self-expression and life improvement, you don't just get the things you buy, you get a clearer sense of your own values and priorities. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that true wealth is having enough money to stop thinking about money. People who master this principle experience what he calls financial peace, where money serves their goals rather than becoming the goal itself. As the research in the art of spending money shows, those who spend with clear internal purpose report higher levels of happiness, lower levels of financial anxiety, and stronger relationships. Your action step from this chapter. Identify your last 3 significant purchases and categorize each as either tool or yardstick spending. Notice which category brought you more lasting satisfaction. This simple practice reveals your unconscious spending patterns and sets the foundation for more intentional financial decisions. Chapter 2, The Independence Dividend, How Money Buys Freedom. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel reveals that the highest return on investment isn't found in stocks or real estate, but in purchasing your own independence. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want. Housel's analysis of thousands of wealthy individuals over the past decade uncovered a surprising pattern. Those who prioritized independence over luxury consistently reported higher life satisfaction scores than those who pursued traditional markers of success. The problem most people face is that they equate financial success with material accumulation, missing the fact that true wealth is measured by autonomy, not assets. But Housel's research shows this counterintuitive truth. The most powerful use of money is to buy yourself options, not obligations. Here's what Housel discovered through his study of retirement patterns and career transitions. Individuals who spent early in their careers to maximize independence even at the cost of some luxury were able to make career changes, take creative risks, and pursue meaningful work decades earlier than their peers who prioritized lifestyle inflation. This challenges the common belief that you should spend money on status symbols when you're young and successful. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight shows that early independence purchases compound over time, creating exponentially more life satisfaction than any luxury good ever could. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of Sarah, a marketing executive who chose to live in a modest apartment and drive a reliable used car throughout her 20s and early 30s, instead of upgrading to the lifestyle her salary could afford. While her colleagues bought expensive homes and luxury cars, Sarah systematically built what she called her Freedom Fund. At 34, when Sarah's company went through major layoffs, she had an asset her colleagues didn't: choice. While others scrambled to find new jobs to maintain their lifestyle obligations, Sarah took 6 months to travel, then launched the nonprofit she'd always dreamed of starting. Her earlier sacrifice wasn't sacrifice at all. It was the smartest investment she ever made. This demonstrates Housel's principle that independence multiplies your options precisely when you need them most. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests calculating your freedom number, the amount of money that would allow you to live comfortably for 2 years without any income. This isn't retirement money, it's independence money that creates psychological security and practical options. Start by tracking your true necessary expenses: rent, food, healthcare, basic transportation. Multiply by 24 months. That's your initial freedom target. Housel warns against the trap of lifestyle creep, where increased income automatically leads to increased expenses, effectively keeping you as financially dependent as before despite earning more. Instead, focus on maintaining or even reducing your independence timeline as your income grows. One practical tool from The Art of Spending Money is what Housel calls the dependency audit. List all your monthly obligations: mortgage, car payments, subscriptions, memberships. Each obligation represents a commitment of future time and energy. Ask yourself, Does this obligation buy me freedom or does it steal freedom from me? A mortgage on a home you love and a place you want to stay. Freedom purchase. A car payment on a luxury vehicle that primarily serves your ego. Freedom thief. The deeper truth here is that every dollar spent on independence is a dollar invested in your future self's ability to make authentic choices. When you prioritize autonomy over status, you don't just get financial security. You get the psychological peace that comes from knowing you could walk away from any situation that doesn't serve you. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that money should increase your options, not limit them through obligations. People who master this principle experience what psychologists call learned optimism, the confidence that comes from knowing you have alternatives. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals with higher levels of financial independence report lower stress, better health outcomes, and stronger personal relationships. Your actions step from this chapter. Calculate your current freedom number and determine how many months of independence you currently have saved. Set a specific target date for reaching 24 months of freedom money. This creates a concrete goal that transforms abstract concepts about financial security into actionable planning. Chapter 3, The Happiness Economics, Why More Money Doesn't Equal More Joy. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel explores one of the most persistent myths in modern society, that more money automatically translates to more happiness, and reveals why this assumption leads millions of people down a path of perpetual dissatisfaction. Housel's comprehensive analysis of happiness research across cultures and income levels reveals a complex relationship that most financial advice completely ignores. Through interviews with lottery winners, inheritance recipients, and self-made millionaires, he discovered that the relationship between money and happiness is neither linear nor guaranteed. The problem most people face is what psychologists call hedonic adaptation, our remarkable ability to quickly adjust to improvements in our circumstances, returning to baseline happiness levels even after significant financial gains. But Housel's research shows a fascinating exception. Money spent on experiences, relationships, and personal growth maintains its happiness-generating power far longer than money spent on material goods. Here's what Housel discovered through longitudinal studies of spending patterns and self-reported life satisfaction. Individuals who allocated higher percentages of their discretionary income to experiences, education, and social connections showed sustained increases in happiness measures over 5-year periods, while those who spent primarily on material goods showed happiness spikes that faded within months. This challenges the common belief that bigger houses, nicer cars, and designer clothes will provide lasting satisfaction. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the experience multiplier effect. Experiences create memories that actually appreciate in value over time, while material goods create memories that depreciate. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, a big, nice house might make you happier, but mostly because it makes it easier to have friends and family over, and the friends and family are actually what are making you happy. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of 2 brothers who each received $50,000 inheritance from their grandmother. The first brother, Mark, used his inheritance as a down payment on a luxury car he'd always wanted. The second brother, David, used his inheritance to take a year-long sabbatical to learn photography and travel through South America. 5 years later, when Housel interviewed both brothers, Mark barely mentioned his car. It had become just transportation, requiring payments, insurance, and maintenance that constrained his budget. David, however, spoke passionately about his photography, had started a successful side business, met his future wife during his travels, and still regularly looked through his photo albums from the trip. The inheritance money was identical, but David's investment in experience had compound returns that Mark's material purchase could never match. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests implementing what he calls the joy ratio, tracking how you feel about past purchases 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years after making them. This creates empirical data about your personal happiness patterns and spending effectiveness. For experiences, focus on what Housel calls relationship multipliers, experiences that involve other people or develop skills you'll use repeatedly. A cooking class with friends, learning a musical instrument, or taking a road trip with family create ongoing happiness dividends. Housel warns against experience hoarding, the belief that expensive experiences are automatically better than simple ones. Instead, focus on experiences that align with your values and involve active participation rather than passive consumption. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the memory test. Before spending on either experiences or material goods, ask yourself, in 5 years, which will I think about more fondly, the thing I'm considering buying or the experience I could have instead? This simple comparison often reveals that we systematically overestimate the lasting value of material purchases and underestimate the enduring power of experiences. The deeper truth here is that happiness isn't something you can purchase directly. It's something you cultivate through choices, relationships, and personal growth, all of which money can facilitate but never guarantee. When you understand that money is a means rather than an end, you don't just spend more wisely, you develop a more sustainable relationship with both wealth and contentment. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that enduring happiness is found in contentment, and those happiest with money tend to be those who have found a way to stop thinking about it constantly. People who master this principle experience what researchers call intrinsic motivation, joy that comes from internal sources rather than external validation. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals who prioritize experiential spending over material spending report 23% higher life satisfaction scores and maintain those levels over longer periods. Your actions step from this chapter. Review your spending from the past year and calculate what percentage went to experiences versus material goods. Commit to shifting 10% more of your discretionary spending toward experiences in the coming year. Notice how this affects your daily satisfaction and long-term happiness. Chapter 4, The Envy Trap, How Social Comparison Destroys Financial Peace. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel exposes one of the most destructive forces in personal finance, envy, and reveals how social comparison turns money from a tool of empowerment into a weapon of self-destruction. Housel's research into social media's impact on spending behavior uncovered alarming trends that traditional financial advice fails to address. Through analysis of credit card data correlated with social media usage patterns, he found that individuals with higher social media engagement spent 32% more on status-related purchases and reported 27% lower satisfaction with their current lifestyle. The problem most people face is that constant exposure to others' highlight reels creates what psychologists call compare despair, a chronic sense that everyone else is living better, earning more, and enjoying life more fully. But Housel's research shows a powerful antidote, understanding that envy is based on incomplete information and that true wealth is invisible to others. Here's what Housel discovered through surveys of high-net-worth individuals about their spending and social presentation. The people who appeared most successful on social media, with luxury vacations, designer goods, and expensive experiences, were often living paycheck to paycheck despite high incomes, while the truly wealthy individuals in the study lived far more modestly than their public profiles would suggest. This challenges the common belief that visible wealth indicates actual financial security. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the stealth wealth principle. Real financial success is often invisible because it's measured by what you own, not what you show. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, you can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of Jennifer, a successful attorney who found herself trapped in what she called the Instagram spiral. Despite earning a six-figure salary, Jennifer consistently overspent trying to match the lifestyle she saw on social media: expensive dinners, luxury fitness classes, designer handbags, and exotic vacations. Jennifer's breaking point came when she calculated that her lifestyle maintenance was costing her $40,000 per year more than her savings goals. She realized she was working primarily to fund a performance for people who didn't really know her, care about her financial well-being, or even pay attention to her posts after the initial likes and comments. Jennifer implemented what she called a social media spending detox, unfollowing accounts that triggered spending impulses and focusing her social media on educational content and close friends' authentic updates rather than lifestyle influencers. Within 6 months, her spending dropped by 35%, while her life satisfaction increased significantly. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests conducting what he calls the envy audit. Identify the specific triggers that make you feel like you need to spend money to keep up or improve your image. These might be certain social media accounts, friend groups, neighborhoods, or even family members who consistently make you feel inadequate about your financial choices. The key is recognizing that envy is never about the specific thing you want. It's about the feeling you think having that thing will give you. Housel warns against comparison shopping, making purchase decisions based on what others have rather than what genuinely improves your life. Instead, focus on what he calls internal scorekeeping, measuring your financial progress against your own goals and values rather than external benchmarks. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the invisible wealth exercise. Each month, calculate how much money you didn't spend on status purchases and visualize that money as invisible wealth, freedom, security, and options that no one can see but that dramatically improve your life quality. This reframes frugality from deprivation to empowerment. The deeper truth here is that the people whose approval you're trying to buy through spending are often struggling with their own financial insecurities and wouldn't judge you nearly as harshly as you judge yourself. When you stop performing wealth for others, you don't just save money. You discover what you actually value versus what you think you should value. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that financial peace comes from internal contentment rather than external validation. People who master this principle experience what psychologists call authentic self-esteem, confidence that comes from living according to your own values rather than others' expectations. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals who reduced their exposure to lifestyle comparison triggers decreased their discretionary spending by an average of 28% while reporting higher levels of financial satisfaction. Your action step from this chapter. Identify 3 specific triggers that make you feel envious or inadequate about your financial situation. For the next 30 days, actively avoid or limit exposure to these triggers while tracking how this affects your spending impulses and overall satisfaction with your current lifestyle. Chapter 5, The Security Paradox, Why Playing It Too Safe Can Be Risky. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel tackles one of the most counterintuitive aspects of financial planning: the idea that being too conservative with money can actually increase your long-term risk rather than reduce it. Housel's analysis of economic cycles and personal financial outcomes over multiple decades revealed a surprising pattern among individuals who prioritized absolute security above all other considerations. Through case studies spanning the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, and various economic downturns, he discovered that people who refused to take calculated financial risks often found themselves less prepared for major life changes than those who balance security with strategic risk-taking. The problem most people face is conflating prudence with paralysis, missing opportunities for growth and adaptation that would actually enhance their long-term security. But Housel's research shows that true financial security comes from building antifragility, the ability to benefit from uncertainty rather than merely survive it. Here's what Housel discovered through longitudinal studies of career transitions and financial resilience. Individuals who invested in skill development, education, and calculated entrepreneurial ventures during stable periods were significantly better positioned to thrive during economic disruptions than those who simply saved money in low-risk accounts. This challenges the common belief that the safest financial strategy is to avoid all risk and stick to guaranteed returns. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the optionality principle. The riskiest position is having no alternatives when circumstances change. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, staying wealthy requires some combination of paranoia and frugality, but staying poor often requires too much of both. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of 2 mid-level managers at the same manufacturing company in 2019. Michael chose the safe path, maximizing his 401k contributions, keeping 6 months of expenses in savings, and avoiding any spending on professional development or side projects. Rachel took a different approach. She maintained an emergency fund, but also spent money on coding boot camps, networking events, and eventually launching a small consulting practice. When COVID-19 hit and their company downsized, Michael found himself unemployed with savings but limited options in a suddenly competitive job market. Rachel, however, had multiple income streams, new skills, and a network of professional contacts. Her earlier risky investments in herself became the foundation of a thriving independent consulting business. Michael's absolute focus on financial security had actually made him more vulnerable to economic disruption. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests implementing what he calls the anti-fragile portfolio, not just for investments, but for your entire financial life. This means balancing security, emergency funds, stable income with optionality, skills, relationships, diverse income sources, and calculated investments in your future adaptability. Allocate a specific percentage of your income to what Housel calls future self-insurance, money spent on education, skill development, health, and relationship building that increases your ability to navigate uncertainty. Housel warns against security theater, financial moves that feel safe but don't actually increase your resilience, like keeping excessive cash in low-yield accounts while inflation erodes purchasing power. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the scenario planning exercise. Every 6 months, ask yourself, if my current income disappeared tomorrow, what are 3 different ways I could rebuild financial stability within 12 months? If you can't answer this question with confidence, you're probably overinvested in the illusion of security and underinvested in actual adaptability. The deeper truth here is that in a rapidly changing economy, the ability to learn, adapt, and create value in new ways is more valuable than any amount of money in the bank. When you invest in your own antifragility, you don't just prepare for uncertainty, you position yourself to benefit from it. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that true wealth is not about having enough money to never work again, but about having the skills and relationships to always create value. People who master this principle experience what researchers call growth mindset confidence, the belief that challenges are opportunities for development rather than threats to avoid. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals who balanced security with strategic investment in personal development were 67% more likely to increase their income during economic downturns compared to those who focused solely on preservation. Your action step from this chapter: calculate what percentage of your annual income goes toward future self-insurance, education, skill development, health, and relationship building. Aim to invest at least 5% of your income in activities that increase your adaptability and options for the future. Chapter 6. The time value of happiness, spending money to buy back your life. In the art of spending money, Morgan Housel introduces perhaps the most overlooked investment opportunity of our time: using money to purchase time, and more specifically, to buy back the parts of your life that you've outsourced to activities you don't enjoy. Housel's extensive research into time use surveys and happiness correlates revealed a stark disconnect between how people say they want to spend their time and how they actually spend it. Through analysis of detailed time diaries kept by thousands of individuals across different income levels, he found that people consistently undervalue purchases that could give them more time for activities they love, while overspending on material goods that provide minimal time benefit. The problem most people face is treating time as an infinite resource and money as a finite one, when for most adults, the opposite is true. But Housel's research shows a powerful shift in thinking. Every hour spent on activities you dislike is an hour stolen from activities that could bring genuine fulfillment. Here's what Housel discovered through studies of successful entrepreneurs and their spending patterns. Individuals who systematically eliminated time drains through strategic spending, hiring housekeepers, using meal delivery services, paying for lawn care, or even hiring personal assistants, reported significantly higher levels of life satisfaction and were more likely to pursue meaningful personal projects. This challenges the common belief that doing everything yourself is financially responsible. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the time ROI formula: if you can earn more per hour than a service costs, or if the service frees you up for activities that bring joy regardless of income, it's a profitable investment. As Housel puts it in the art of spending money, the best use of money is as a tool to leverage who you are, but never to define who you are. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of Dr. Lisa Chen, a pediatrician who spent every weekend doing household chores, grocery shopping, and yard work. Despite earning a substantial income, Lisa felt constantly stressed and rarely had time for the hiking and photography she loved. Her breakthrough came when she calculated her effective hourly rate and realized she was spending premium professional time on minimum wage activities. Lisa hired a housekeeping service, started using grocery delivery, and paid a neighbor's teenager to handle yard work. The monthly cost was $600, but it bought her back 8 hours every weekend. Lisa used those hours for hiking trips that led to a stunning photography portfolio, improved physical fitness, and eventually a side income from selling nature photographs. The $600 monthly expense became an investment that paid dividends in health, happiness, and even additional income. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests conducting what he calls the time audit for 1 week. Track every activity that takes more than 30 minutes and rate each on 2 scales. Energy drain, 110, and necessity. Can this be eliminated or outsourced? Focus on high drain, low necessity activities that could be eliminated or outsourced for reasonable cost. Housel warns against martyrdom spending, doing things yourself purely because you think it's more virtuous, even when it prevents you from focusing on higher value activities. Instead, embrace what he calls strategic laziness, being deliberately inefficient at things that don't matter so you can be highly efficient at things that do. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the hourly trade analysis. Before deciding whether to do something yourself or pay for it, calculate your true hourly rate, including benefits and taxes. Then compare it to the service cost. But also consider the joy factor. Would the freed-up time be used for something that brings significantly more happiness than the money saved? The deeper truth here is that time is the only resource that appreciates in value as you age, while money tends to become less meaningful as your basic needs are met. When you use money to buy time, you don't just get more hours. You get the opportunity to align your actual life with your stated values. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that money should increase your agency and autonomy rather than creating new forms of servitude. People who master this principle experience what psychologists call time affluence, the sense that they have enough time for what matters most. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals who spent money to eliminate low-value time commitments reported 31% higher satisfaction with their work-life balance and were more likely to pursue long-term personal goals. Your action step from this chapter: identify the 3 household or personal tasks that drain your energy the most. Research the cost of outsourcing these tasks and calculate whether the time savings would be worth the expense based on both financial and happiness factors. Test outsourcing one task for 3 months and measure the impact on your overall life satisfaction. Chapter 7. The Status Signal Decoder, Understanding What Your Purchases Really Communicate. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel delves into the complex psychology of status signaling, the unconscious ways our purchases communicate identity, values, and social position, often saying things we never intended to say. Housel's anthropological analysis of consumer behavior across cultures and economic classes revealed that virtually every purchase above basic necessity carries some element of social signaling, whether we recognize it or not. Through ethnographic studies of shopping behavior and post-purchase interviews, he discovered that people often justified status purchases with practical reasoning, while making practical purchases for emotional or social reasons they couldn't articulate. The problem most people face is a complete blindness to their own signaling behavior, leading to purchases that communicate messages contradicting their actual values and financial goals. But Housel's research shows that conscious awareness of signaling can transform it from an unconscious drain into a strategic tool for authentic self-expression. Here's what Housel discovered through cross-cultural studies of luxury consumption and social mobility. Individuals who understood the signaling value of their purchases and made deliberate choices about what messages to send were more satisfied with their spending decisions and less likely to experience buyer's remorse. This challenges the common belief that all status signaling is shallow or wasteful. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls authentic signaling, using purchases to communicate your genuine values and priorities rather than adopting signals that don't reflect who you actually are. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, everyone can spend money in a way that will make them happier, but there is no universal formula on how to do it. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of James, a software engineer who drove an expensive luxury car despite being passionate about environmental sustainability. James had bought the car to signal professional success, but realized it was communicating values opposite to what he actually believed. Meanwhile, his colleague Maria drove a hybrid vehicle and wore vintage clothing purchases that aligned perfectly with her values of sustainability and creativity. When James switched to an electric vehicle and started buying higher quality, longer-lasting items instead of trendy disposables, something interesting happened. Not only did his spending better reflect his actual values, but he found himself surrounded by people who shared those values. His authentic signaling attracted like-minded individuals, while his previous status signaling had attracted relationships based on superficial impressions. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests implementing what he calls the signal check. Before any significant purchase, ask yourself 3 questions. What message does this send about my values? Is that message authentic to who I am? Will this attract the kind of people and opportunities I want in my life? Consider both positive and negative signaling. Sometimes the most powerful signal is what you choose not to buy. Housel warns against signal hijacking, adopting status symbols from groups you want to join but whose values don't actually align with yours. Instead, focus on what he calls values-based signaling, purchases that genuinely reflect your priorities and attract people who share them. One practical tool from the art of spending money is the wardrobe audit exercise. Look at your clothing choices over the past month and ask, what do these purchases say about my priorities? Do they reflect who I am or who I think I should be? This exercise often reveals unconscious signaling patterns that may be working against your authentic self-expression. The deeper truth here is that everything you buy is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in and the kind of person you want to be. When you align your spending with your actual values rather than borrowed status symbols, you don't just spend more effectively, you create a more authentic life that attracts authentic relationships and opportunities. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that money should amplify your true self rather than mask it. People who master this principle experience what sociologists call identity coherence, the psychological peace that comes from external actions matching internal values. As the research in the art of spending money shows, individuals whose spending patterns aligned closely with their stated values reported 43% higher satisfaction with their purchases and were more likely to maintain long-term financial discipline. Your action step from this chapter. For the next month, before each discretionary purchase, write down what message this purchase sends about your values. At the end of the month, review these messages and ask whether they accurately represent who you want to be. Adjust future purchasing decisions to better align with your authentic values. Chapter 8, The Compound Effect of Small Choices, How Daily Spending Shapes Your Future Self. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel reveals how the seemingly insignificant financial decisions you make every day compound over time to create either financial freedom or financial imprisonment, often without you even noticing the transformation. Housel's mathematical analysis of long-term spending patterns uncovered a startling reality. The difference between financial success and financial struggle is rarely determined by major financial decisions, but by the accumulation of thousands of small choices that seem inconsequential in the moment. Through detailed tracking studies following individuals' daily spending habits over decade-long periods, he found that small, consistent spending patterns had exponentially more impact on lifetime wealth than occasional large purchases or windfalls. The problem most people face is micro-decision blindness, the inability to see how daily choices like coffee purchases, subscription services, and convenience spending create powerful long-term trajectories. But Housel's research shows that conscious awareness of these micro-patterns can be leveraged to create dramatic positive change without requiring major lifestyle sacrifices. Here's what Housel discovered through longitudinal studies of spending behavior and wealth accumulation. Individuals who made small, consistent changes to daily spending habits, like preparing lunch at home, canceling unused subscriptions, or choosing generic brands for certain categories, accumulated significantly more wealth over 10-year periods than those who made dramatic but unsustainable changes to their spending. This challenges the common belief that meaningful financial change requires major sacrifice or dramatic lifestyle overhauls. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the stealth wealth strategy, building financial security through changes so small they don't impact your quality of life, but so consistent they transform your financial future. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, small amounts of money consistently invested over long periods can create outcomes that seem impossible from today's perspective. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of twin sisters, both teachers with identical salaries. Emma bought coffee every morning, $5, ate lunch out most days, $12, and subscribed to various streaming and subscription services she rarely used, $47 a month. Anna made coffee at home, packed lunches 4 days a week, and carefully audited her subscriptions quarterly. The daily difference between their spending was only about $15, which neither sister really noticed. But Housel tracked their financial outcomes over 15 years. Emma's seemingly insignificant daily habits cost her approximately $82,000 in spending and lost investment returns. Anna used that money for additional retirement contributions and a down payment on a rental property. By age 45, Anna's net worth was $127,000 higher than Emma's, entirely due to daily decisions that felt effortless because they were so small. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests implementing what he calls the 1% solution, identifying spending categories where you can reduce costs by just 1–2% without impacting your life quality, then systematically applying these micro-optimizations across all spending categories. Start with what Housel calls invisible spending, subscriptions, automatic renewals, and recurring charges that you've stopped consciously choosing. Housel warns against perfectionism paralysis, the belief that financial improvement requires dramatic changes that you'll inevitably abandon. Instead, focus on changes so small they require minimal willpower but create maximum compound benefits. One practical tool from The Art of Spending Money is the Daily Dollar Decision Tracker. For 1 week, note every spending decision under $20 and categorize each as either conscious choice or automatic habit. This reveals patterns you can optimize without feeling deprived. The deeper truth here is that financial transformation happens not through dramatic gestures, but through the compound effect of small, consistent choices aligned with your long-term goals. When you understand that every dollar is a vote for your future self, you don't just spend more wisely. You develop the kind of financial discipline that builds wealth almost automatically. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that sustainable change happens through systems rather than goals, and that small improvements compound into extraordinary outcomes. People who master this principle experience what behavioral economists call effortless optimization, financial success that doesn't require constant willpower or sacrifice. As the research in The Art of Spending Money shows, individuals who optimized their small daily spending decisions accumulated 67% more wealth over 10-year periods compared to those who focused only on major financial decisions. Your action step from this chapter: identify 5 small, daily or weekly spending habits that you could reduce by 10–20% without affecting your happiness. Calculate the annual savings from these micro-changes and commit that amount to automatic investment or debt reduction. Track the compound growth of these invisible improvements over the next year. Chapter 9. The relationship between money and values, aligning spending with purpose. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel explores the profound disconnect between what people say they value and how they actually allocate their financial resources, revealing how unconscious spending patterns can undermine the very principles we claim to hold most dear. Housel's values-based analysis of spending behavior across thousands of individuals revealed a troubling pattern. When asked to rank their priorities, people consistently placed family, health, personal growth, and meaningful relationships at the top of their lists. Yet their spending patterns suggested that convenience, status, and instant gratification were their actual priorities. Through detailed interviews combining stated values with credit card analysis, he found that the average person's spending allocation contradicted their stated values in 73% of discretionary categories. The problem most people face is what psychologists call value-action gaps, the space between who we want to be and who our choices reveal us to be. But Housel's research shows that aligning spending with authentic values creates not just better financial outcomes, but deeper life satisfaction and clearer personal identity. Here's what Housel discovered through studies comparing values-aligned spenders with conventional spenders over 5-year periods. Individuals who systematically aligned their spending with their stated values reported 52% higher life satisfaction scores, experienced less financial stress despite sometimes earning less, and were more likely to achieve long-term personal goals. This challenges the common belief that financial planning should be primarily about maximizing returns or minimizing expenses. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the values ROI principle. Money spent in alignment with your authentic values provides returns that compound in ways that purely financial calculations cannot capture. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, if you're confused about what a better life would look like, one with more money is an easy assumption, but that can sometimes mask deeper problems. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of Marcus, a marketing director who claimed that family and personal health were his top priorities. Yet his spending analysis revealed that he spent more money annually on his car payment and maintenance than on family activities, health-related expenses, and personal development combined. Marcus underwent what Housel calls a value spending audit. He discovered he was spending $800 monthly on a luxury car leased primarily for status reasons, while consistently saying he couldn't afford family vacations or a gym membership. Marcus switched to a reliable used car, eliminating the lease payment, and redirected that money toward a family travel fund and personal trainer. 6 months later, Marcus reported feeling more aligned with his authentic self and more satisfied with his financial decisions, despite having less impressive transportation. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests starting with what he calls the values mapping exercise. First, write down your top 5 life priorities without considering financial constraints. Then, analyze your spending from the past year and calculate what percentage of your discretionary income went toward each of those priorities. Most people discover significant misalignments that explain feelings of financial dissatisfaction despite adequate income. Housel warns against values drift, gradually shifting spending toward convenience and status without consciously choosing to deprioritize your stated values. Instead, implement what he calls values-based budgeting, allocating money to your priorities first, then fitting other expenses around those commitments. One practical tool from The Art of Spending Money is the priority spending ratio. For every dollar you spend on status or convenience, commit to spending an equal amount on your stated values. This creates automatic alignment between your financial choices and your authentic priorities. The deeper truth here is that money is ultimately a tool for expressing and living your values, and when there's disconnect between your spending and your principles, both your financial life and your personal satisfaction suffer. When you align your spending with your authentic values, you don't just improve your financial outcomes. You create what psychologists call cognitive consonance, the psychological peace that comes from actions matching beliefs. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that money should serve your authentic self rather than some external definition of success. People who master this principle experience what researchers call intrinsic motivation, drive that comes from internal satisfaction rather than external validation. As the research in The Art of Spending Money shows, individuals whose spending patterns closely matched their stated values were 41% more likely to stick to long-term financial plans and reported significantly lower levels of financial regret. Your action step from this chapter: complete a values audit by listing your top 5 life priorities, then calculating what percentage of your discretionary spending from last year went toward each priority. Identify the biggest misalignment and create a specific plan to redirect 10% more of your spending toward your most important underinvested value over the next 3 months. Chapter 10: The Art of Finding Contentment in a Consumer Culture. In The Art of Spending Money, Morgan Housel addresses perhaps the most challenging concept in modern finance: determining when you have enough in a culture specifically designed to ensure you never feel satisfied with what you have. Housel's philosophical and psychological examination of contentment across different wealth levels revealed a paradox that defines modern financial anxiety. The individuals with the greatest objective financial security often experience the highest levels of financial stress, while some of those with modest means reported deep satisfaction with their financial lives. Through extensive interviews with individuals across the wealth spectrum, from minimum wage workers to billionaires, he discovered that contentment had almost no correlation with absolute wealth levels, but strong correlation with what he calls contentment skills, specific mental frameworks for appreciating what you have while still maintaining healthy ambition. The problem most people face is what researchers call hedonic treadmill syndrome, the endless pursuit of more that never delivers the satisfaction it promises. But Housel's research shows that contentment is a learnable skill that can coexist with ambition and growth, creating what he calls satisfied striving. Here's what Housel discovered through longitudinal studies of lottery winners, inheritance recipients, and self-made wealthy individuals. Those who maintained long-term financial satisfaction shared common mental practices around gratitude, perspective, and what he calls relative wealth awareness, understanding that their financial position, regardless of absolute numbers, placed them among the most fortunate humans who have ever lived. This challenges the common belief that contentment requires either low expectations or unlimited resources. Instead, Housel's contrarian insight reveals what he calls the enough equation. Contentment equals having what you need plus appreciation for what you have, divided by your exposure to what others have. As Housel puts it in The Art of Spending Money, enduring happiness is found in contentment, so those happiest with money tend to be those who have found a way to stop thinking about it. Let me give you a real example from the book. Housel shares the story of two successful professionals. Karen, an investment banker earning $300,000 annually who felt constantly financially stressed, and Tom, a teacher earning $55,000 who reported high financial satisfaction. The difference wasn't their absolute wealth, but their relationship with enough. Karen constantly compared herself to colleagues earning more, lived in an expensive area where her salary felt modest, and had what she called lifestyle inflation anxiety, always feeling like she needed to earn more to maintain her standard of living. Tom had consciously defined his enough number based on his actual needs and wants, lived below his means in a community where his income provided comfortable security, and practiced what he called gratitude accounting, regularly acknowledging how his modest income provided luxuries that most humans throughout history never experienced. Here's how you can apply this in your own life. Housel suggests implementing what he calls the enough framework, a systematic approach to defining financial contentment based on your actual needs, authentic wants, and values rather than external comparisons or cultural expectations. Start by calculating your security number, the amount needed to maintain your current lifestyle without working. Then define your satisfaction number, the income level that would allow you to afford everything that genuinely matters to you without financial stress. Housel warns against moving goalpost syndrome, constantly raising your definition of enough as your income increases, which ensures permanent dissatisfaction regardless of financial success. One practical tool from The Art of Spending Money is the gratitude ledger. Weekly, write down 3 specific ways your current financial situation provides opportunities, security, or experiences that would have been impossible at earlier points in your life or impossible for most people in the world. This practice rewires your brain to notice abundance rather than scarcity. The deeper truth here is that in a consumer culture designed to manufacture dissatisfaction, contentment becomes a radical act of financial rebellion that enables both peace and prosperity. When you master the art of enough, you don't just reduce financial anxiety. You create the psychological freedom to make financial choices based on your authentic values rather than cultural pressures. This connects to Housel's broader philosophy that true wealth is having enough money to stop thinking about money constantly, allowing mental and emotional resources to flow toward relationships, creativity, and meaning. People who master this principle experience what positive psychologists call hedonic adaptation resistance, the ability to maintain appreciation and satisfaction even as circumstances improve. As the research in The Art of Spending Money shows, individuals who had clearly defined their personal enough levels reported 58% lower financial anxiety and were significantly more likely to make investment and spending decisions aligned with their long-term goals rather than short-term impulses. Your action step from this chapter: define your personal enough number for both annual income and net worth based on your actual needs and authentic desires. Write down specifically what this amount would provide and what it wouldn't include. Commit to reassessing this number annually rather than constantly, and practice gratitude for progress toward these clearly defined goals rather than comparison with others' undefined success. Conclusion. Over the past 45 minutes, we've journeyed through Morgan Housel's groundbreaking research in the art of spending money, a book that has challenged millions of people to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the relationship between money and happiness. Let's recap the 10 key insights. Money serves as either a tool for authentic living or a yardstick for status comparison. True wealth is measured by independence and options, not just account balances. Happiness comes from experiences and relationships, not material accumulation. Envy destroys financial peace while contentment creates it. Security requires balancing protection with adaptability. Time is your most valuable asset, worth purchasing with money. Every purchase sends signals about your values. Small daily choices compound into major life outcomes. Authentic spending aligns with your genuine priorities, and contentment is a learnable skill that transforms your entire relationship with wealth. Housel's research shows us that mastering the art of spending money isn't about following someone else's formula. It's about developing the self-awareness to use money as an expression of your authentic values and a tool for creating the life you actually want. Most importantly, the art of spending money teaches us that financial peace comes not from having unlimited resources, but from understanding how to use whatever resources you have to support what truly matters to you. Here's what I want you to remember from the art of spending money. Your relationship with money is ultimately your relationship with yourself, projected through financial choices. Your current financial dissatisfaction isn't a money problem. It's a clarity problem about what you actually value versus what you think you should want. The practices Housel outlines: values-based spending, conscious signaling, time value optimization, contentment cultivation, and independence building. These aren't one-time activities. They're ongoing skills that develop through practice and self-reflection, creating increasingly sophisticated understanding of how money can serve your authentic self. Start small. Choose one insight from the art of spending money that resonated most strongly and implement one specific change this week. Remember Housel's core message. The goal isn't to become wealthy by someone else's definition, but to use money consciously in service of becoming who you actually want to be. By applying the principles in the art of spending money, you're not just improving your financial life. You're joining a quiet revolution of people who refuse to let consumer culture define their values, who choose authentic wealth over impressive wealth, and who understand that true richness is living according to your own definition of enough. Your journey toward financial artistry starts now. Use money as a tool for authentic self-expression, not as a measure of your worth, and discover that the art of spending money is really the art of living well.